Inside, Charlotte waited near the door. When she saw Issa walk in, her small frame lit up with happiness. There was no need to bow or act royal. They were just two girls who were glad to see each other again. Charlotte walked over to Issa, gave her a tight hug, letting her know she was welcome in this beautiful place. While following them a few steps, Kate smiled and gave Issa's mom a gentle nod that showed she understood and cared. The palace staff knew that today was a special day, and they were aware of how quiet the visit would be. There were no press, photographers or official statements. It was just a playdate between two girls who were friends, even though life kept them apart a lot. The girls walked into the royal grounds as the rain stopped. The grass was still wet under their feet, and the air was cool and fresh. The family dog, Loop, came along and ran round with them, while the girls played hide-and-seek in the bushes. And trees, small daisies grew along the garden paths, and they picked them. Their laughing filled the air as they made up games that only they could understand. They laughed so hard that their faces turned red, and when they were done, they sat down on the soft grass with Loop's tail wagging next to them. Kate brought them snacks herself. She poured juice into cups with her own hands while carrying a small tray of fruit and cookies. No, she wasn't a princess. She was a mom enjoying an easy moment of happiness with her daughter and her new friend. The sky was back to a soft grey when it was time for Issa to leave, which meant that it might rain again. Issa turned around and looked back at the castle. The warmth she had felt that day showed in her eyes. Charlotte stood next to her and held her hand for a moment longer before letting go. She looked into her eyes and said softly, "We'll see each other again." In the late evening, Charlotte curled up on the couch next to her mum. She leaned against Kate and put her legs under her. Her voice was soft as she said that Issa did not want to leave. Kate put her arm around her and gently told her that this was just the start, and that kindness always finds a way back. The visit was kept quiet for a while, inside the palace walls for safety. But soon, the plan to keep the visit secret started to fall apart. A junior employee who didn't know how sensitive the matter was, lightly brought up the visit at a dinner, and within days, rumors about it made it to the tabloids. People began to wonder who Issa was, why she was there, and whether this was part of a royal plan to get attention from the public. Some people told Kate to ignore the reports and let them go away on their own so that things wouldn't get complicated. They thought letting the story grow was too dangerous. Kate knew deep down that being kind should never be hidden. She decided to tell the truth in her own way because she thought being kind wasn't something to be embarrassed about. A message was sent 2 days later that said every child deserves to be safe, treated with respect, and given the chance to grow, and that Charlotte's act of kindness came from a place of understanding. Families from all over the country shared right away how Charlotte's deeds had motivated their own kids to be kind at school and in the neighborhood. Kate worked quietly, behind the scenes, to make sure that Issa's family got more than just a day of kindness. She got in touch with the Children and Families Initiative of the Royal Foundation to offer help and helped Issa get a grant through a partner school. A kind stranger gave Issa's family money to move into a small, warm, and safe home in West London. This gave them a solid place to live where Issa could keep dreaming and growing. It wasn't about big actions. It was about making real changes, so a single act of kindness could turn into something that lasts. When Issa walked through the palace gates on that rainy day, it became the day of kindness in the palace. This shows that even a small act of kindness can spread to bigger things and leave love wherever it goes. How this friendship changed the palace. For the next time Issa went to Kensington Palace, she wasn't a guest who needed to be let in. She came with a friend. She showed up with a smile and a small bag full of her favorite colors and little surprises. Charlotte met her at the door, and as she ran up to meet her, happiness lit up her eyes. There were no proper steps or formalities. There was just a warm moment between two young girls who were glad to see each other. Charlotte took Isla by the hand and led her straight to the art room, which was got ready for their day together. Little hands could use the paints, paper, beads, and clay that were all set up in the room. It took them hours to paint bright flowers and stars, string beads on thread to make necklaces, and draw silly pictures of palace staff that made them laugh so hard they couldn't breathe. It was the sound of two happy kids laughing softly through the halls. They felt safe and free at that very moment. The kids talked about school, their favorite colors, and the dreams they had but didn't tell anyone. During those hours, the world outside the palace walls didn't matter. They were just two girls who spent time together and became close through kindness and a natural bond. Kate stood by the door and quietly watched them play. They were laughing, and she didn't get in the way or stop them. She also didn't pose for pictures. She just stood there and watched the scene, letting the happiness fill her heart. She saw her daughter be kind and let Issa into her life because it felt right, not because it was what everyone else did. For Kate, this moment was never about how she looked or what she had to prove to everyone. She wanted her daughter to learn how to be kind and how a small act can mean a lot more than just that day. In a place where custom often put people apart, it was about letting friendship grow, about showing that even in the quiet parts of a big house, people can be kind. Soon, the yearly charity garden event in the spring would be here. People from the community, schools, and donors got together in the palace grounds for an event to honor the work that is being done quietly to help kids and families across the country. It was always quiet, classy, and polite, and it took place in soft sunlight with soft conversations floating through the air. This year was different. Issa didn't come to the event just to take pictures. She came because she is friends with Charlotte. There were no big announcements that she was there, and cameras weren't flashing around waiting for the right shot. It was quiet as a mouse as Charlotte and Issa walked hand in hand across the garden grounds. Charlotte wore a soft mauve dress and carefully pinned back her hair. Isla held her hand with quiet confidence and wore a light dress that blew in the wind. The guests didn't judge what was going on. Instead, they just knew that something real was happening in front of them. Charlotte introduced Isla to the people around them by telling her short stories and making her feel welcome without any pressure or doubt. It wasn't like Issa was a charity case or a sign. She was taken care of like a friend who had a place there. People who were there noticed how natural Charlotte's kindness seemed and how she wasn't doing it to get praise. Being good at it was a part of her and how she saw the world. There were quiet conversations and laughter in the garden, and everyone felt welcome. This showed that being kind could change the mood of any meeting. Kate stood off to the side, next to Amanda, Issa's mother. Amanda watched her daughter with eyes that were gentle with relief. Standing there together, they didn't need to say much because they both knew that this moment was worth everything that it took to get there. Even though the scene was simple, it had power that moved everyone there. The events that day in the yard did not fade away as time went on. Issa started going to one of the best schools in London, thanks to a grant that made it possible for her to keep studying without having to worry about money. Someone she knew quietly helped her mother find part-time work. Soon after, they moved into a stable home in a quiet neighborhood. This gave them a sense of safety and routine that they had been missing for a long time. All of this didn't make the front pages of any newspapers, and no one gave a speech claiming win. Building a life with honor, one step at a time, wasn't about getting praise. Charlotte and Issa kept getting together on the weekends, sometimes at the palace and sometimes at Ella's new house. Their laughing filled the rooms where they sat and played, read stories, and made up new games. During these visits, there were no cameras and no news stories were made about them. In between two friends who enjoyed being with each other, time passed slowly. Their simple friendship became a quiet lesson that being kind doesn't have to be a big deal. It just exists, getting stronger in quiet times spent with caring people. Kate didn't talk about it in public again. She didn't need to. People who were there shared the story as proof that being kind can grow into something bigger than itself if you choose to do it and keep doing it. Let kindness grow within the walls of custom. This showed that change could happen without making a fuss or drawing attention to itself. Everyone who paid attention got a message from Charlotte's small but powerful choice to put friendship over limits and Kate's quiet choice to back it up. In its simplest form, it showed that kindness can change lives and that real care can leave a mark that no crown could ever fully cover. What do you think about Charlotte's choice to take a girl who was homeless into her home? Do you think the Princess and Princess of Wales did the right thing? Leave your... And I think she's shown that in everything she's done. Have you made it a point of having her teach you something as the future king? It wasn't a royal event when Princess Charlotte brought a homeless friend home. It was a moment that made everyone feel something. Many people were shocked by Kate Middleton's quiet choice, which broke down royal barriers. What made the young princess do this though? And just what did her mother do? Come along with us as we look into the details of this nice act. The house couldn't say anything about Princess Charlotte's secret. There was no way to know how much Princess Charlotte's choice that went against royal rules would shake the palace. At first, it was just another calm day, with another visit to a school that wasn't caught on camera. It was supposed to be a normal trip, a short trip to a London community shelter planned by Thomas's mother for her junior year class. The building was hidden behind busy streets and had a door that made a noise every time it opened. Sometimes the paint was coming off, and the walls had a faint smell of old books and damp air. Charlotte's friends walked in with their coats zipped up high to protect them from the rain. As they talked about homework and snacks, their shoes tapped on the wet tiles. A lot of them weren't paying attention and let the day go by quickly. That was not Charlotte, though. She saw things that other people didn't. She always did. Charlotte walked slowly and carefully inside the palace. Even when she was a little girl, people knew her to check on her brothers when no one was around, fix George's collar before family pictures, or tuck a toy under Louis's arm when he started to fuss. People who worked in the castle often whispered to each other that she was like a mum. When they were in the gardens, she would gently pull her brothers' sleeves together to keep them close. She would lead them with her little hands, which felt sure even when there were cameras waiting to take the perfect picture. She would, if Louis drops his small blue toy truck behind the couch, get it for him quietly before he starts to cry. She hasn't done that. No, she's more of a soft type of teacher who teaches in a quiet way. She would tell George to wash his hands before lunch and fix his tie if he had tipped it over while running down the hall. She would often wait until her brothers were in bed before going to sleep herself. She liked it when everything was clean in the hallway and the toys were in their boxes. Before slipping under her blanket, she would smooth out the corners. She would look up at the sky and think about the day, remembering small details so she would never miss anything. Her calm awareness made her seem much older than she was, even though she was only 8 years old. Things would be different at the shelter that day. Charlotte's sharp eyes saw something that the other kids didn't as she was led through the small eating area, into a room with toys and old books stacked in the corners. There was a girl with knotted hair and a coat that was too big for her shoulders, sitting quietly near the edge of the room. A tall, creaky shelf almost blocked her view. As she held a book that looked way too heavy for her to easily hold, her hands turned pink from being cold. The girl wasn't in the school group. She didn't laugh or talk like the other people. The soles of her shoes were worn down, and her coat was thin. She sat with her head bowed low, as if she wanted to hide from the noise. Charlotte was most interested in her eyes, though. That's not all they did. Listening to every sound in the room, every soft word, and the shuffle of feet was part of their search. The other kids moved on to look at the toy shelves, but Charlotte stopped and kept her eyes on them. The girl's fingers were moving around the sides of the book, even though her hands were so small they could barely hold it. When someone laughed, she saw the girl's eyes dart up, but then they quickly went back down, as if she was afraid of being seen. Charlotte didn't see a stranger at that moment. Instead, she saw someone who was quietly wishing to be seen, understood, and treated with kindness. The day Princess Charlotte brought the girl home, Charlotte had taken to ignoring the many royal rules that followed her around all the time. That day in the shelter, she quietly moved away from her friends. With slow, steady steps, she crossed the room and got closer to the girl in the big coat. The girl stared at Charlotte for a moment, not sure if she should turn away or stay still. The girl said her name, Issa, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, right after Charlotte said her name. After a short pause, Issa took the book off her lap and told them it was about a dog that gets lost, but finds its way back home. Charlotte felt happy when she heard the story. She remembered reading the same book and how it made her cry every time she turned the page, thinking about the little dog that just wanted to go back to the people it loved. The air between them changed because of that small link. It went from being cold and heavy to being light and warm. The floor was cold under Charlotte and Issa as they sat down next to each other. The book was carefully balanced between their knees as Issa began to tell them small parts of her life. They stayed there with their heads close and their shoulders lightly brushed. Her mother got sick and lost her job, so she had to switch schools. She used to go to a school down the road. They lost their home and started living in temporary places. They moved around a lot, with only a few small bags of belongings. They came to the shelter for hot meals and a safe place to sit for a while. Charlotte didn't say anything, just looked at Issa's face the whole time she talked. She didn't feel sorry for Issa, she felt something else. An air of admiration. Issa didn't whine or try to get pity. She told tales about how her mum still cooked on a small stove, and how she kept her drawings in her bag so they wouldn't get lost. She also said that she hoped to get a pet one day when things got better. Charlotte felt Issa's small hopes as big ones, and she wished she could give Issa the puppy she dreamed about. A young helper saw that Charlotte wasn't with the group while they were sitting on the floor. She got a feeling of worry in her chest. She kept in mind that she had to watch over the little princess whenever she left the house grounds. Charlotte always made sure that every step she took outside the palace walls was well thought out. A small group of security guards followed behind. Officers in plain clothes mixed with the people, and trusted helpers kept an eye out for anything that didn't seem right. Charlotte's presence meant that she was safe even when she went on school trips. The safety was there, but it was quiet and unseen. Charlotte learned how to pick up on certain signs. When someone lightly tapped her on the shoulder, it was time to go. Her helper gave her a quiet nod to pause, and she waved her hand near the doorway to let her know she needed to go back to her group. She learned these signs on her own and didn't need to be told them every time. She got used to how her life moved in quiet rhythms of safety and direction. While she played outside during school breaks, security guards watched her and followed her around the field without getting in the way of her fun. She learned to tell when someone was close by. She didn't feel scared, but it was like the sound of footsteps on the royal floors or the leaves rustling outside her window. She sat where she could see out the window in cars, but helpers were always close by and ready to quickly lead her in and out. She saw familiar faces in the background when she went to parks or gardens with her family. They were close enough to help if they needed to, but far enough away that she could run and laugh without worrying. That day at the shelter, the young worker walked up slowly, her eyes moving between Charlotte and Issa as she did so. Her shoulders tensed with worry. She took a deep breath when she saw Charlotte's calm face and saw that her little hands were holding the book with Issa. She gently waved for everyone to come back together. She stood up, gave Issa a small nod, and followed her helper back. The girl who had told her so much in such a short amount of time was still on her mind. Dinner at Kensington Palace that night felt different. She was quiet and pushed the peas around on her plate. Her mind was still on Isis's stories. Kate saw that her daughter was quiet and that her eyes looked far away. Charlotte slowly raised her eyes from the table, which was warm and lit by soft lights. She spoke in a soft voice about Issa, saying that they were the same age, that Issa was kind and smart, and that Issa did not have a place to go at the end of the day. Kate paid close attention as the sounds of the house at night mixed with the soft tapping of the rain outside. Charlotte spoke, and William leaned in to listen. His eyes met Kate's as her daughter talked about how Issa didn't cry when she talked about her life, how brave and full of hope she was even though she didn't have much. An important job that requires certain traits and qualities, and I think she's shown that in everything she's done. The parents kept quiet because they knew Charlotte had seen something real and important that no school or quiet royal lesson could have shown her. Before she told them about a small dream that had been growing inside her, Charlotte took a moment to play with the edge of her napkin. She thought that Issa might be able to come over for tea or a short visit. Maybe she could play in the yard and enjoy the flowers and sun for a while. Kate reached out and put her hand on Charlotte's. The soft, warm touch said more than words could ever say. She asked Charlotte to talk more about Issa. Charlotte's face lit up as she talked about Issa's love of drawing, her hopes for a better tomorrow, and her desire for a puppy. The house was quiet that night after Charlotte went to bed. Soft lights in the halls cast soft shadows across the rooms. Kate stood by the window and looked out over the grounds. The moonlight was shining on the grass and leaves. She felt the weight of Charlotte's story, the honesty in her words, and the hope in her small wish to help a friend who only had goals and a brave heart. The world was quiet at night. William joined her at the window and stood still as they both looked out. They both had quiet thoughts that seemed to flow together. Kate spoke softly, sharing her thoughts and her hope to meet Issa and learn more about the girl who had touched Charlotte's heart so deeply. She knew this moment was different because it came from their daughter's clear and honest heart. William heard and nodded. He knew that their daughter's wish wasn't just a childish thought, but a small act of kindness that could turn into something big. They both agreed to open a door quietly as the first step toward learning more. They knew that this small action could bring light where there had been none before. So began a quiet set of steps inside the house. Careful, well-thought-out steps were taken, led by the sweet wish of a young princess who had seen beyond her world and decided to bring home a friend, not just in stories, but in hope. The letter that made everything different. Charlotte's little feet made their way down the palace's quiet halls as the sun just barely touched the roofs. Of course, it was way too early for a Saturday, but she couldn't stay in bed because she felt hopeful. As she held a lined piece of paper in her hand, she still wore her robe. The arms fell over her hands, and her socks made her steps quiet on the polished floors. Kate was having her first cup of tea in the kitchen. The steam was rising in the cool morning air. Charlotte walked through the doorway, and she was shocked to see her. Charlotte's hair was still a mess from sleep, but her eyes were clear and bright, and she seemed to have a purpose that was bigger than her small frame. Kate gently asked Charlotte a question as she looked at the paper she was holding tightly. Charlotte slid the note across the room and onto the table without saying a word. She did this with the careful attention of someone who knew this paper held something important. After setting down her drink, Kate picked up the note and read the careful, shaky handwriting. It was a short letter with some misspelled words, and letters that were leaned in the wrong direction, but it said what it meant. Charlotte had written Isla, a simple, sincere invitation. She hadn't thought about what the royal family would think or what would make news. She just wanted to be friends with another child who needed one. Kate felt warm inside as she read the words. They were a gentle reminder of how good her daughter was, untainted by the high standards that often came with being a royal. There was something pure and kind in Charlotte's wish. It was soft and didn't ask for anything in return. It wasn't about how things looked or what other people might say. It was about a child who saw another kid quietly struggling and wanted to help just because she could. Kate's thoughts went back to all the times she had watched Charlotte grow and care for her brothers with a calmness that seemed older than her years. She always treated George with care, straightening his collar when it got crooked and gently, telling him to pick up his shoes from the hallway. While Louis slept, she checked on him to make sure his small blanket hadn't fallen to the floor. Charlotte was kind in quiet ways, like when she put a toy back on a shelf before Louise could notice it was missing. It was there in the small parts of their lives, between busy days and work. Kate's love for her kids had always been so deep that it was impossible to measure, a love that changed how she lived each day. There was nothing more important to her than spending time with her children in peace. No matter how many times she went out in public, gave talks, or shook hands, she learned to remember their laughter when she had to go somewhere, and to hold their little hands in her mind when the outside world got too loud. Once Charlotte was born, Kate felt a bond with her daughter that only a mother can feel. It was a thread that could never be severed by the responsibilities of royal life. Charlotte's small, determined tilt of the chin, the way her eyes searched a room for people who needed help, and her quiet focus when she wanted to fix something, made her think of herself. Many days, Charlotte had come to Kate with small requests. Kate always tried to say yes because she knew it was important for her daughter to grow up being able to do nice things on her own. Kate thought Charlotte should follow her heart's gentle pulls, whether they were to help Louis with his puzzle or pick wildflowers for the table. She knew that Charlotte's character would be built through these small actions, making her someone who chose kindness without fear. Kate's love for her kids shaped how she raised them, by not giving them hard rules, but by letting them know it was okay to care, notice, and act. She would watch Charlotte carefully hold Louise's hand as she led her brothers into the yard. Charlotte would make sure George waited patiently while Louis explored at his own pace. She would see them laugh over small things like finding a ladybug on a leaf or the shape of a cloud. These seemed like small things, but they were what made their family strong and based on care. In the quiet hours before bed, when the world outside the royal walls seemed far away and only the soft glow of the lamp and the quiet of the evening remained, she and Charlotte talked like mother and daughter. Charlotte liked to talk about her day, her friends, and the little things she saw that other people missed. Kate would listen and offer small comforts, letting Charlotte know that her feelings were understood and that her desire to help others was a gift, not a burden. Charlotte often sneaked into Kate's room early in the morning and showed her pictures, talked about stories she wanted to write, and shared ideas for small acts of kindness she wanted to perform. When a kid talked, Kate always took the time to listen. She knew that these thoughts were the beginnings of a heart learning how to love the world around her. Kate felt all of these things in her heart as she held Charlotte's note that morning. They reminded her of why she would always back her daughter's kindness, no matter how big or small it got. She knew that letting Charlotte follow her kind wish to invite Isla wasn't just for one visit. It was so she could teach her daughter that being kind is something that should be done, that helping other people is something that shouldn't be hidden or put off, but should be welcomed with open arms. Kate looked at Charlotte and saw that she was full of hope and eager to make another child's life better. She gave her daughter a nod to let her know that this letter, this small act, was beautiful and should be shared. Later that afternoon, Kate called the shelter's director in a calm and friendly voice to let her know that her daughter wanted to give a note to a new friend. To make sure everyone was safe and comfortable, plans were made and small things were checked. A talk with the security team to make sure the visit is kept secret, so Charlotte can do what she wants to do without cameras flashing or people looking at her. The two girls got out of the car together when they got to the community center. The sidewalk was lit up by soft afternoon light that made soft shadows. The staff was shocked to see them and quickly led them to a small room off to the side where Isa and her mother Amanda were waiting. It was a big day and lots of things were happening. It was early and Peter and Autumn were there. She had been wanting to meet Kate for a while. She was very kind to come over and say hello. We talked for a while and got along great. Amanda looked tired in a quiet way, like she had been on a lot of hard roads. The weight of fear that came from trying to protect her child while going through hard times by herself was heavy on her shoulders. When Kate walked in, she stood still, her hands twisting softly as if she didn't know what to say. Kate moved with a flow that filled the room with ease. Her warm presence rounded out the edges of the moment, making them feel closer to each other. Her quiet smile reminded Amanda that this wasn't about titles or jobs, but about mothers getting to know each other as women who both wanted their kids to be safe and happy. The girls sat nearby and talked quietly with their heads down. Kate spoke softly to Amanda and paid close attention as she told her what was going on. Amanda told her story honestly, not trying to make people feel sorry for her. She said he used to work as a librarian but lost her job when funding was cut. Because she was sick, she couldn't work for a while. How the bills kept piling up, leaving them with few choices and trapping them in a cycle of temporary living and quiet worry. Kate stayed still and listened, taking in every word and recognizing the respect in Amanda's voice. The quiet strength used to keep going even when things got hard. Again, it was probably with a lot of other people, and she was very nice. No, it was fine. It hit her hard how quickly things could change in life and how easy it was to lose security, even when you were doing your best. Charlotte and Isa sat close to each other while they talked. Their small voices were softly excited as they talked about gardening, dogs, and how they hoped to see each other soon. Kate watched them and saw how easy it was for them to get along, how being kind didn't need to be taught, and how friendships could grow anywhere. Kate told Amanda before they left that they would love for Isla to come over if it worked out, if it added even a little light to a week that was otherwise likely to feel heavy. When Amanda nodded, her eyes filled with soft tears that she held back. There was a quiet understanding between them, and they both promised to be kind without expecting anything in return. That night, Charlotte was back at Kensington Palace. She walked through the halls with the lightness that only a child's happiness can give. She moved quickly, and the hope on her face was bright. Kate was told the news and told that Isla would be coming over for tea. Her voice was full of joy because she had kept a promise. Kate watched as her daughter went into her room, leaving behind a warm glow in the hallway that made the whole house feel happy. Being aware that this was just the start, she felt the weight of the day slowly lift, that Charlotte's desire to help would last beyond this moment, sending a soft ripple outward that would tell them all that acts of kindness have an effect that can't be measured. If you want to be a good boss, I think you need to develop the right traits and skills. They had already talked, and they both agreed that this visit would be private, with no cameras or speeches. It would just be a moment of people helping each other and a family opening their doors out of love, not because it's the right thing to do. So, a simple letter from a young girl to a new friend set off a chain of kindness that went far beyond anything anyone could have imagined. It reminded them all that the kindest actions often come from people with the tiniest hearts, who care, just because they can. When Princess Charlotte broke the royal rules, for royals, making friends outside of the palace is normal. They do it at school, at charity events, through sports, or through hobbies they both enjoy. But it's not the same thing when you let a friend into the house. A royal home is one where rules are written all over the hallways. Traditions form each day, and there are quiet but firm walls that separate the inside world from the outside world. The palace is a controlled place that only a few people are allowed to enter. Every visit, guest, and meeting is planned and checked. Usually family, important people, or guests who have been carefully chosen. These fences kept Prince William and Prince Harry safe as they grew up. When they were young boys, they went to schools where making friends was promoted, but they were always watched over by security teams. They had lessons, games, and little bits of free time during the day. However, everyone who saw them leave the palace knew exactly where they were going. This kept them safe, while still letting them have as normal of a childhood as possible inside. The royal system. William and Harry had fun at school by laughing with their classmates, running around on the fields, and studying in the same classrooms. Their friends played football with them, shared snacks at lunch, and sat next to them during meetings. But there was a quiet system of checks and balances behind each friendship. It was part of being a royal child. Friends of William and Harry's often came from families that knew how important privacy was and knew that talks about the boys' daily lives should not happen outside of school. The details were carefully handled even at birthday parties and playdates. When they went to a friend's house, security teams stayed close by. They didn't get in the way of the fun, but they were always watching to make sure they were safe as they played games or ate cake at the kitchen table. If a friend came to visit, the palace staff got ready for it, making sure the kids felt welcome while keeping up the quiet routines that kept the royal family safe. William and Harry went to Eton College when they were older. There they had more freedom while still following royal rules. Some peers became close friends with whom they shared jokes and stories, stayed up late to study, or played sports on the fields. Even though they were at Eton and mixed in with other boys in uniform, their lives were not really their own. They were kept an eye on, shown the way, and told of the quiet rules they had to follow. There were rules that came with being part of a family with hundreds of years of history. When they were in the army, both William and Harry made friends with other soldiers. They faced problems together and worked together to solve them. Through training and tasks, they became closer and learned how important it is to work together when things go wrong. These bonds were strong because they were based on service, but even then, people knew them as royalty. For their safety, their every move was watched, and even though they were freer in the field, everyone still saw what they did through the lens of royalty. Even though they were friends, most people were not allowed to enter their private areas in the house. Guardians kept their lives inside the palace safe, keeping the royal family separate from the rest of the world outside the walls. It wasn't about turning people down. It was about keeping alive a practice that valued privacy, a way to keep the family's life under control and out of the public eye. After meeting Isla at the shelter, Princess Charlotte asked to have tea with her at the palace. This wasn't just a child's dream. In that moment, the silent walls that had been there for generations were quietly pushed aside. There were walls between the royal world and the daily struggles of people. Charlotte didn't ask because she wanted to do something bad. She did it because she wanted to help a friend who needed it. It wasn't an easy choice for Kate to say yes. The quiet rules of the house were broken by a soft but powerful moment. It was a mother who chose to back her daughter's kindness, even though it meant going against what had always been done. Kate knew how important it was to teach her kids to care about others, no matter who they were or where they came from. It was more than just a tea visit when Isla was let into the house. It showed what kind acts could look like when they go above and beyond. It showed that there was room for warmth, connection, and times when people were more important than the rules that surrounded them, even in places where custom was strong. This event did not happen to make news or get praise from the people. It was a quiet act of kindness that was decided by the family. It let a young girl share her life with a friend who had shown her what it meant to be brave in hard times. This served as a lesson that genuine kindness doesn't need to be approved by tradition. It can happen anywhere people choose to care. Charlotte wanted to bring Issa to tea, and Kate agreed. It was a small but powerful moment in the palace that reminded everyone that even the oldest customs could make room for a child's friendship. It was a step toward a kinder future where the lines between royal and non-royal people could blur, if only for a moment. How this kindness made the house feel. After 2 weeks, Issa carefully made her way to Kensington Palace on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The mother of her daughter cleaned a used dress neatly so that she would look her best that day. She borrowed shoes from a gift bin at the community center that were a bit too big for her, but she wore them with pride. Her small hands held the straps of her old backpack as she walked forward with quiet courage. No matter where she was, her mother told her to be nice, say thank you, and be herself. As Issa walked up to the palace walls, she kept those words close to her heart. She was nervous and excited at the same time. As they waited for the gates to open, the rain fell softly and hit the umbrella they shared.